Welcome. This is Happy Childless Mindset Podcast.
Today I'm with Nicole. She and I are starting with this episode, we are starting a series because we realized that we took the opposite path and become kind of in the same place, and we get into the same place from opposite paths. So welcome, Nicole. How are
Thank
you?
you. Good, good. It's nice to be here. Nice
Do
to be
you?
with you.
Thank you. Nicole and I are friends from a couple of years now, I think.
I think so. I can't remember when we first met. At least a year and a
It's,
half to 2 years,
yeah,
somewhere around there.
it seems like we've been friends for longer than that. So
Yeah.
would you want us to tell us kind of your story or a
Yeah.
kickstart?
Yeah. Well, I guess I could just kind of locate myself physically. I'm in Toronto, Canada. And then I am also single and childless. Yeah, rather than go through the whole story, there's a long story. We all have a story. I think, part of the key parts of it that are relevant to our discussion today are, yeah, I've really felt like I was struggling from the time I was really young. Now I know it was a lot of developmental trauma challenges. But what happened with me was that I was just like, it was like I bathed in shame. Like I felt like I just lived in shame. And uh, I would get triggered constantly and be unable to stop crying. Um, and it led to a lot of mental health issues and challenges. And I just wasn't really getting good answers for years when I was seeking out help. And so I feel like that's probably the main the main reason for my childlessness.
Yeah, I what we were talking before we started to record was that you went into this path of coaching and wanting to like feel better, and you hit a wall there. It was making you feel worse about yourself. And that's what it's opposite to myself, because I did a lot of conventional therapy and like a lot of psychologists told me like feel the panic attack, feel the sadness, and I felt like I was drowning there.
Mhm.
And feel the panic attack is an easy answer to someone that never had a panic attack. 20 minutes of a panic attack is hell. So
Yeah.
I started to look into not have it, not just endure it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I really relate to the feeling of drowning. Like I felt like I was drowning emotionally. And I definitely got panic attacks. There was a period of like a long period of time where I was incredibly hypervigilant. Um, a period of time where there was so much like fear and adrenaline running through my system that um like I couldn't sleep. I was going through days and weeks of not sleeping. And so I relate to that. But yet there was something, it was like with the crying and with the drowning, it was like I didn't know how to. I realize now I really had there was no like emotional regulation in my system, kind of. So there was some kind of a number of things going on. But I was very much I grew up a kid of Oprah and talk shows, Donahue, Geraldo, like that whole era. And it was very self-help based. My mother was really into self-help books. We were just, talking last week about how she brought up the book, what Vincent Norman Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. I grew up with all of that, and it was really not at all helpful. not to say that it didn't have, there weren't certain things that it offered, but it certainly wasn't the whole story. And in the end, it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't the thing that helped. And I mean, just, from the time I mean, I started therapy when I was a teenager, I think, a young teenager, was in and out of different kinds of therapy, like anything from psychologist to psychiatrist to different kinds of therapy. I did coaching programs. I did Joe Dispenza. I did another program called DNRS. I can't tell you how many different workshops, self-help books. Um, and in the end, it was much more of, I mean, I will say that like the spiritual component of like really helped. I got really into Buddhism, and Advaita Vedanta. And again, I never really followed them as religions per se, but there's key similarities between all of them that did help. But again, they weren't the whole story. It wasn't until I got into sort of more trauma resolution, parts work, more like Jungian kind of themes, like alchemical ideas. That's what really was in the end the most helpful. But it's been yeah, it feels like almost. I'm 48 now, and it feels like it was like a 40 plus journey to get here, 40-year plus journey.
I think maybe we went in opposite path to reach the same end because we started in opposite path.
Yeah,
My household was really negative, and the only emotion allowed was anger. So no
mm,
positivity talk at all. And even if if I was trying to like find the silver lining as a child, it was like, it's not like that, everything sucks. And so I think maybe I started to realize I could regulate my emotions and think differently because I needed to get out of that anger and that negativity loop.
right. Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
But it also took me, like, I did a lot of psychology things, a lot of like different professionals, different like Freud, conductism. How do you say it in English? Conductal behavioral,
Okay. Yeah,
behavioral, and for me it was like I just keep talking about the same shit and I'm not
yeah,
getting anywhere. And I have to say, I'm not against therapy, but for me, it was worsened. I
yeah,
actually started having anxiety when I was in therapy because my therapist wanted to for me to talk about things that I wasn't ready to. And she
yeah,
kept pushing me, and I started to have panic attacks. And I was already
yeah,
an anxious person.
yeah, yeah. And there's something about therapy where, because I guess there's two things. One is the other challenge with therapy is sometimes it can just be reliving. Like
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many therapists I sat down with who were like, "Can you like share some of your story?" And I tell my story, and they'll be like, "Okay, well, like take your time and it can be really hard to do." And I'd be like, "I got this down pat. Like I can
Yeah.
tell you my story like in and out till, we could sit here all day and I could tell you my story, but it wasn't actually resolving anything." And I don't know, there's something in me that feels like we heal. I don't feel like we're totally in control of the timing and the how of which we heal. Like there was a number of events. Like sometimes I feel like there's something fated. I really do feel that, at least for my own life, in terms of like how things all unfolded and came to a head. And then I was like, it's like I was pulled into this thing, and I was really, for whatever like fortune, like these different things showed up at the same time. but it wasn't really like what had stopped with therapy at that point was like a reliving the story. It was more about skill building. And so I found a couple of really, really great therapists who were um and part of it too was the timing of it, of that was when suddenly trauma and sort of somatic therapies were like flourishing in a way, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly, like, my therapist, one of them in particular, when I was really at a particularly vulnerable and challenged time and was really like on the edge, she would really pull me out of the story constantly. Like, I would want to go into the story and she would pull me out and she'd be like, okay, that's nice. Now we're going to do some EMDR. Like, she wouldn't let me go into it. And she'd be like, okay, now when you are not with me and when you get triggered, these are the things you have to do. And I also found a spiritual teacher that I was working with a lot who was also very like clear on that. And so I think having these people who, they would say you need space to get out to vent, to get out the anger, to, my teacher would call it like holodeck, to like express all the energies that are in you, but you not in a way that's like a spiral, but more in a way that's allowing it to like live out and process and alchemize to get you somewhere else.
Yeah.
But so much of that was I feel like timing and good fortune.
Yeah, for me, like psychotherapy, conventional Freud therapy is not for me. Sometimes
Yeah,
at least the professionals I went, they forget that when we tell our story, we relive it in a physical way,
yeah,
and we strengthen that neural path. So I felt like I was reliving everything and constantly, and I didn't want to go there, and they didn't give me any tool really. And
yeah.
behavioral therapy gave me tools, but the few professionals I went to, they didn't teach me to think differently, to
Mm,
seek other way of thinking. It was so like focus on what I do.
mm,
And I was doing well while I was in therapy, and when therapy ended, like you are doing this, and I went back to my old way of thinking, and that was it. I again locked in my home with agoraphobia because I didn't know how to like stop the negative thinking loop, the constant like hypervigilance. So
right.
for me, coaching and spirituality, because also I'm not a religious person. I grew up in a really religious town, and it's not that I hate it, but I respect them. It's not for me. The dogma thing is not for me.
Yeah.
But realizing that there is something bigger than us, that that it doesn't judge us. It's there, but it's not
Yeah.
the white men with white beard saying, "You're a bad girl, you're a bad." Uh, helped me a lot. I'm tap into the spirituality and how to regulate my emotions through thinking, through
Mm,
what I was thinking in my day to day. We have over 70,000 thoughts per day.
yeah.
And all of my work, this is bullshit. I hate my life. I want to die. I have no reason to be alive. It takes a toll. So I
Yeah.
needed to start there.
And I'm so curious, like, what that looked like for you, like what that involved, because I know, we've discussed it, like that, the trying to control my thoughts or trying to change my thinking never worked for me and actually left me like spiraling even more because I was like, I'm doing something wrong. Like, why is this not working? It was the number of programs and books or different things that I read that was like, control your thinking, change your beliefs, and then your emotions will change. And for me, it was actually very much almost like the opposite. So I'm curious about what that looked like for you.
I hope you are enjoying this episode. If you are, please consider making a donation to the coffee link in the description. Okay, back to the episode.
Yeah.
It's I started really small and I watch a lot of lessons in YouTube on how to, and the one that really helped me was forgive yourself every time you go back to those thinking. Because
Mhm.
I experienced 30 plus years of thinking that way. It wasn't going to just erase like that. But I started to, one technique I used was to challenge what I was thinking. Like,
Mhm.
I'm worth nothing. I don't have any worth. And I start thinking like, is that true? Is that really, or I'm no good for anything. I can't do anything. Is that really true? I don't know. Do I cook a good meal? Yeah. So that's not everything, I
Mhm.
started to kind of erase the the words never, ever, all, none, how do you say it? Because I know the word in Spanish, but I'm reading English. I started to challenge if everything was bad or everything, I suck at everything. Everything, really. You don't do
Mhm.
one thing good. And then I started to be kind of, oh, that's not true. So maybe that other thought is not true also. And I started to talk to myself. I'm the kind of person that hears her thoughts, her voice in her.
Mhm.
So I started to like putting everything in positive, which led to another conclusion because not everything you think can be positive. Is I kind of went into positivity, toxic positivity, but it took me like a week and I switched back to no, not so much. You are overdoing it. But
Mhm.
I started like instead of saying I can't do that, saying like I struggle to do that, and sometimes I can and sometimes I don't. So I gave
Mhm.
myself the permission to fail and at the same time the permission to succeed. That it was
Mhm.
so alien for me at the time, It was everything
Yeah.
was black and white for me.
Mhm. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah.
Huge shift.
Yeah, it took me years. And
Yeah. I
I
believe
still
it. Yeah.
got myself sometimes like, you're a piece of shit. I am? Really?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so that didn't work for you.
No, no. I mean, I suppose a small amount of it did here or there. But I think what really helped, I think there were a couple things. One, I found the work of, for years when I was struggling and spiraling, and I was getting constantly triggered as all my friends got married and had kids and were disappearing. It was like I've heard a couple of people talk about, when they lose a parent and how they just weren't prepared for it, and it
Yeah.
really like flattened them. And was just an absolute shock. For me, that was actually my friends getting married and having kids. And it just, you know, and I was surrounded by, why can't you just be happy for your friends? I, was surrounded by like, why can't you just be happy? So many, things like that. And so I think p- the first thing that really helped was Tara Brach's book, Radical Acceptance. It really helped me. I had so much shame. I thought I was absolutely a horrible, wretched person.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking about any of this stuff back at this time, right? Like we're going back more than 15 years ago. And I really thought I was just wretched and horrible. I was really had a moral like quandary with myself. So at the that was at the time that I was trying all of these, thought-based sort of therapies. And again, it led to the spiral of just why can't I change this? And I was doing, the gratitude journals and everything, and it wasn't making any difference. I wasn't, it was a real challenge. And then I mean, a number of things happened in between there, but then I found my teacher, and it was as if I was like just so thirsty for somebody to teach me how to be a mature human being. I was like, I all of the thought, all of the self-help, like none of it was working. I was like desperate, and I was, you imagine like the feeling when you're just so dehydrated and parched and thirsty and you're like a sponge. And I found her, and something just really clicked, and her teaching was really, to me, I would summarize it in like, how do you be a light in this world and reckon with your humanness? And how do you do that in a mature way? And I had said to her, like, none of these thought therapies have worked for me. And she's like, they didn't work for me either. And I was like, oh my God, it was like a beacon of light in the fog, because I, hadn't really, everybody was so focused on thoughts, and she wasn't. And she was like, you need to feel, like, feel it all. And I would say, like, in terms of like her teaching, it definitely did, affect my thoughts. It affected my way of thinking, but it was more in terms of okay, life can be really, really shit, and you may feel horrible forever, but you're not entitled to feel anything different. And so there was like a deep, like, kind of reckoning, but it was very much at like a feeling level versus like a thought level. And it was like, okay. And the other thing is that she would really train you to actually come out of your head and into your body, which I know when one has like a lot of anxiety and
It can be tricky.
like that can be, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's certainly not for everybody, but for me it really worked. And I mean, I had to do a lot of titrating at first because it was when the trauma was quite bad. So I'd have to recognize, okay, I'm going in a spiral, and this could really get the anxiety and all the fear triggered. So I've got to be careful about how deeply I go into these places, because it could spiral even more. So it was really tricky for like a period of time, but there was something about it that really like resonated. And I did get to the point, because I had a lot of really intense, like obsessive, intrusive thoughts. Like, I mean, I had suicidal ideation for years.
Yeah.
I was really deeply hurt by somebody, and I was really like, had like a target on her, and the thoughts going through my head. And she had this process whereby you'd like come into the body, which did end up working for me in the end. And, sitting in your powerlessness. And then somehow in there, space, I think I absorbed a lot of her teachings, which sort of changed my beliefs. And then I created space and distance between my thoughts and my, like, the
Yeah,
experience of like my body. Yeah, so I think, yeah, for me, that, for whatever reason, was the thing that really worked.
yeah, this last weekend I was in a meeting with a lot of in the Strive Solo membership for Lucy Mageson. And we were talking about some of us were really bullied in school.
Mhm.
And Lucy pointed out that we are like not feisty, but we are still extroverted. And I told them, like, I tried to be the wallflower and be the punching bag, and but that made me feisty at first. And I think that's why I I tried to sit with my emotions when I was a child, and I end up with the anxiety I have because I didn't have anyone to guide me through what I was
Yeah,
feeling. And now I sit with some emotions, but anxiety never. I don't sit with my anxiety. Or either I start walking here in my home, or doing some breathing, but the thing that mostly rescue me from that anxiety spiral is challenging my thoughts.
Mm,
But I think again we come from opposite starting points because
yeah.
I didn't know how to control my thoughts, and I know they kind of do a loop into emotion thought and the thought emotion, and my whole childhood and teenage years were just emotion. I didn't like I was sitting there with them alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get, it's interesting. I'm just sort of thinking back to mine. I mean, I felt like I was sitting with my emotions alone too, because um yeah, neither of my parents. I mean, my dad was like very kind of I was terrified of him as a kid. Certainly couldn't talk to him about emotions. And my mom was far more like compassionate, but she was more of the thought. So she was always like, how do we make this better? How do we make this better? Whereas I really kind of just needed to learn to sit with what couldn't be fixed or what I couldn't have. Whereas she was
Mm,
trying to solve it all the time, which really didn't do me any favors in the end,
yeah.
right? So um, yeah, it's interesting. In some ways, I wonder too if there's just like different breeds out there. Some are much more, I love astrology, right? And if you look at like different charts and the different things that make us up and the different kinds of signs that we are, like I'm so water, right? I'm
Yeah.
such an emotional, and I can't remember. I know you're Aquarius, but I can't remember your rising and moon
My
sign.
rising
But
is Leo, and
yeah,
my moon,
fire.
I think it's Cancer. How do you say it? Cancer in
Yeah, Cancer.
English?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you've got a mix there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which makes sense. Yeah,
The little I dipped into astrology was like, I'm so fucked up. I don't know. Like I'm torn between everything. What is happening?
yeah. You're definitely like, yeah, you've got all the different elements in there. Yeah.
That's why I think I am also an ambivert. People
Yeah.
think that I'm this extrovert person because I have a podcast and in Zoom meetings I talk a lot, but I'm doing this for like 3 or 4 hours and then I retreat to my little cave and I'm with myself.
Yeah.
you know? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird. I don't really talk in real life. It's like I really
Yeah.
enjoy the silence and being with myself.
Yeah. Which, you know what? Yeah. Leo rising, sun in Aquarius, moon in Cancer. That there you go.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
You just described it. Yeah.
I'm realizing that I do sit with my emotions, but in my silence, you know,
Yeah.
that I do feel what I'm feeling. I What happened to me was that your mom tried to make it like, how can we see this positively? My mom was like, shut up, keep talking, you're
Mm.
okay. So it's
It's like she
weird.
gaslit you.
Completely. She still gets like
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
to this date. It's like
Yeah.
I'm an adult, hello. But yeah,
Yeah.
but I do allow myself to feel them. I don't allow myself to overfeel them. I don't know
Mm.
if that makes sense. Like it
Hmm.
I need to get to a point where okay, I'm shaking this emotion off because
Mm.
I have the tendency to go down and get lost in the downward
Yeah.
spiral.
Yeah. And that was really like a lot of work was learning not to do that and to learn to see it as like weather. It sounds cliche, but it's emotions to me are
Yeah.
very much like weather moving through, and some are really stormy and intense, and then others are, like a light fog kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? So, but and then it's learning, it was the skill was learning not to like to learn to not spiral. And like I had a really hard week a few weeks ago, which
Yeah,
it
I
was a
remember.
really, really challenging week. And then it was amazing. It was like suddenly, you know, then suddenly just the sun came out, and I was like, oh,
I
this
just
is
picture the
nice.
intro of The Simpsons, but instead of
Yeah,
the clouds,
that's what it felt like. Yeah.
yeah,
It was like, I was like, oh, interesting to just watch how this moves now. Yeah.
yeah. I you talked before about the book Radical Acceptance. I didn't read that book, but for
Mhm.
me, acceptance was a key to change my thoughts.
Mm, yeah.
I accept I'm having this obsessive thinking about, like you said, someone that hurt me and I couldn't let them go. Or so yeah, I accept them. And then when I accept them, I started to releasing and but it was so it's counterintuitive, you know? You think
Yeah.
you need to keep fighting them. And once
Totally.
you embrace, it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was like I was saying to you, like the way that I got to, whatever place that I'm in right now, which is pretty good. Like I'm not drowning anymore. I'm
Yeah.
so grateful. I'm not constantly getting triggered. Sure, I still have my, challenges and this and that and ups and downs, but I mean, the years that I just felt so out of control. I don't feel that anymore, and I'm so grateful for that. And the how I got there was by saying, if I never stop crying, if I never feel good, that is just what this life is offering me. And my task is not to feel entitled to anything different and to make peace with this and to bring mercy and compassion to myself through this, and to do what little I can to show up in different ways, in enjoyment, in my relationships and pleasure and in all kinds of ways, even if I couldn't ever, you know, feel better. Um, and it was wildly and totally surrendering to that that something just started to shift.
Yeah.
It was like I stopped fighting it and I was like, okay, you've got me, you know?
Yeah. The same thing, but for my thoughts. Because
Mm,
like I think I think and I feel like I only felt anger and anger in an aggressive way,
mm,
because I was so hurt that I was like, I'm going to attack first before someone can attack me. It was a defense mechanism.
yeah,
So yeah, accepting that, yeah, these are my thoughts. I want to just attack everyone. Yeah, and that started to change, and it's still like mind blowing
yeah.
because it's like that phrase that it says like the exit is inside or the path to exit is from inside. I know that the quote in
Oh, I don't
Spanish,
know.
the way out is inside.
It's through.
It's yeah, but
Okay. Yeah.
instead of seeking it out there, and I
Yeah.
felt like that was like the acceptance of I'm feeling this, I'm thinking this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't completely surrender to feeling and thinking better. Like you said, you thought, I'm not entitled to anything more. I, what I did think was, okay, I've been thinking like this and moving through life like this. It doesn't have to be like that, but I do stop fighting with my past and how I was
Mm,
perceiving things. Like, yeah, okay, I get through to here like that. What can I do from now on?
yeah.
Yeah. But I still think I deserve better. Not
Mm,
because I'm entitled or I'm special but because I think everyone deserves to find joy and to be able to have peace.
yeah. I guess, and one of the things my teacher would often say was, she made the distinction between entitled and deserving. We are all deserving of
Yeah.
great things, of joy, there's so much that we are all deserving of. We're on planet Earth. Planet Earth is planet Earth, right? Are we
Yeah.
entitled to it? No.
No.
So it's really like how you know, yeah, carry the deserving in terms of, going after more for yourself. But
Yeah, I didn't think,
yeah,
I never thought about like, I deserve this because that's
yeah,
entitlement. I thought
yeah,
like, I deserve to smile and I deserve to have peace. What
mm,
can I do to achieve that? How I need to think and
yeah,
to who do I need to embody to
mm,
be there? I
right.
I wasn't expecting that it was given to me in a silver platter. I
Yeah,
was thinking, okay, I need to change myself to in order to feel that way.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
which is amazing. Yeah.
I think we reached the ending of this first episode. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we pause it, or do we leave things for the next one?
I think I'm good for now. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the next one for a continued
Yeah, because
exploration of these different things.
I can't keep talking to you about this because I know you also can do it because we have been playing with this idea for a long
Mhm.
time before we realized we are going to do this, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the sake of whoever is listening, let's leave it here and do another episode because we have a lot more like this different path that can lead to something that is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess maybe one other thing I'll just say is, we've talked about different words and how different words mean like such different things to us. And so I'm really excited to sort of explore those. Because I love having these conversations because I love being challenged and rethinking some of the ways, and I'll say refeeling too, because it changes the way that, like I feel and experience these words
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely.
So all of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye bye.
You.